Part 2 of the France 24 debate. Thanks for joining us again. My guests this evening, Pierre-Alexandre Tellier, co-founder of Gov, former advisor to Christine Lagarde, Nicolas Vinocourt is Paris correspondent for Politico, and Frank Tapiro is the former media advisor for Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president. You're also CEO of a consulting firm known as Hémisphère Droit. We're discussing today whether François Hollande, the French president, can salvage his presidency and perhaps manage to open a window of opportunity for him to run again as president. The next presidential election is a year from now. The next time the French president goes on TV, however, national TV, is 30 minutes from now. François Hollande will be speaking to French voters. His own camp admits that this could be make or break time. Frank Tapiro, just before the break, you were saying basically François Hollande has to be audacious, take a no-holds-barred approach, and he has to speak to the youth. Yeah. The youth which currently no longer believes in him, the youth which, by the way, right now is protesting in central Paris, Place de la République, the Up All Night movement, people who are disillusioned with the left. He's got to speak to those people, you say.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic opportunity for him to reconnect with these people because, of course, they are totally disappointed. They're lost. They're lost because they think that the president lied to them and it's only a promise of politicians, etc., etc., etc. And when we hear what have been the exchanges and the talk during this fantastic night, because it was a high level of producing new ideas and propositions. It was very quiet. It was not a violent movement. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's very important. It's because something happened few weeks ago, and he knows this perfectly because, you know, he's really clever.
When you say something happened a few weeks ago, you're saying the protests against the planned labor law reforms?
Yeah. No, something happened because he knows that people have not the same belief to the public speech. They don't believe them. They don't listen to them. They don't care about them. And what you told us with your results show this. They don't care. When they're on television, they are not waiting for them anymore. And we need...
Yeah, whether people are actually going to watch the show is also a question that's worth asking.
Yeah, but it showed that he needs to reconnect. And we know that the best or the worst public for a politician, it's young people, of course. And today, it's worse than before. Why? Because remember Jacques Chirac. Jacques Chirac made exactly the same TV show with few young people, and after 20 minutes, 30 minutes, he was totally lost. And I remember he was like that, said, "Je ne comprends pas ce que vous me dites."
I don't understand what you're saying.
I really don't understand what you're saying. And he was totally lost, and he was truly, sincerely lost.
And that was a turning point when the president himself admitted he just didn't understand what young people were asking.
But he finished by that. I think that François Hollande should start with this, not saying, "I don't understand." You said, I've understood your message, and I'm going to tell you what failed in my project. And maybe we can have a talk and reconnect. If he doesn't reconnect with them, I think he's totally, definitely, completely lost for the next election.
I think part of the problem is that he has never come out and defended his own policies. He's let the last 6 months go by.
But you were telling us earlier he does not have a record that he can defend.
But the problem is, all he can do is explain and be sincere tonight. I think we agree with that. The Bai has a problem with his trustworthiness and his trust in him, and he can just own up and say, these were the mistakes, and this is the direction now. And the problem is that François Hollande has never come out and say, I support the liberalization of the labor market. He's never said that. And he's never said, I support the constitutional reform. He's let ministers go out and do it. So he could borrow a page from his economy minister, Emmanuel Macron, and say, well, you know, there's also a good side to freedom in the labor market, and the freedom to hire and fire people will help you get into the labor market. If he
hold on, is that a political calculus that helps him with his voter base? Because his left-wing voter base hates Emmanuel Macron.
Well, be it as it may, if he doesn't agree with those policies and he's not sincerely with them, then he shouldn't be conducting them. He needs to stand behind the policies that he's conducting, for better or worse. This is a man who is always afraid. He is speaking left-wing and doing
And acting.
center or right wing. It doesn't work anymore. Stand behind it and live with the consequences. I think that's the problem with him. He needs to do it.
Can this show, we've been saying how perhaps just maybe if he does it the right way, this show can put him on a path where he can start seeking re-election, just the beginning of a long road towards re-election. What about if you turn the question the other way around? Can this show kill it? That's what you were saying. Can this show absolutely, totally kill his chances?
Yeah, of course, if he comes to this show trying to be, out of the reality and said, no, we have a good action, maintenir le cap, like you said, to keep the path.
Yeah, keep steering the ship in the same direction that it's been going in.
If he starts to talk like that, and if he doesn't make, this, not contrition, but said, okay, maybe I took a wrong way. Maybe
He's got to make amends and recognize
had
mistakes.
to start with this. If he let the young people tell him or think or react like, you're a liar, you told this, and of course we don't have any result. What do you think that should be great for us? What are your ideas? It's too late for him. So he needs to take, the
bull by the horns.
Exactly, and say, okay, I've understood what you said, I've understood your feelings, and I understand why you are feeling like that. And the feelings and the emotion are very important. He has to connect to the emotion to the young people, because young people...
To harness the anger, turn it into hope. Is
Yeah,
that right?
because, people hate politicians. Why they hate politicians today? Because they said they are not understanding. They don't understand what we are feeling. They don't understand how we are living today. And it's because they hate politicians. It's not because of a problem of money, a problem of stealers. No, it's not this problem. It's only a problematic of connection and emotional connection with them. So we need to reconnect right now. At the very first minutes of the show, he needs to say, okay, I've understood. I'm here not to trying to avoid, the solution. Not say, okay, I'm here to talk with you. I know that there have been mistakes. Maybe, I wanted maybe this project to say I'm going to reverse, the curve of the unemployment was maybe a dream, but it's my inner dream. And I wanted to tell you that, etc., etc., etc. If you start like that,
So
and if he's
reverse the
sincere,
narrative and use it to his advantage.
sure, and creating a connection, because if at the end of the show it's only fights and arguments, and the young people are going to destroy him on social networks, and not only on Periscope, even if it was a disaster.
Yeah.
They don't need only Periscope, only a few words.
For our foreign viewers, the president tried to show that he was tech savvy recently and go on the application Periscope, and it was a disaster. He was just lambasted by users. Pierre-Alexandre Tellier.
Yeah, I think big mistake of all politicians over the past 30 years is basically the same, making short-term promises on which they are absolutely unable to deliver. But if I remember when François Hollande probably won its election when he was candidate, it's on one speech in Le Bourget.
In 2012.
Yeah.
Yes,
Brilliant.
It's probably the only time where he shared a vision, a dream, where should we go basically in 10, 20, 30 years.
And the most memorable part of that speech was when he came out against finance and the world of finance and bankers and businessmen.
That was an embarrassment.
And it fed into one of his campaign arguments that he didn't like rich people.
But he
But
lied.
at least
He lied.
he
He
shared
never
of
did
course he lied.
anything against
But he
finance.
shared a vision.
He took Panama off the list of tax havens after the Panama Papers. He could have done that at any point.
Exactly.
Where is his legacy against the banks? He gave that speech and people voted for them, and he deceived them.
Yeah, but hold on. That was the speech he made. Yeah, Alexandre is telling us that was a turning point in his campaign. What you're saying is what we know of his record now. People didn't know that at the time.
Absolutely, but I'm saying
As a
tonight,
campaign
it's
argument-
difficult for him to say, remember the spirit of Le Bourget. Let's go back to that. It's too late.
Probably not this way, but
No,
if
the
he's
energy.
able-
The energy of
he's
the
gotta
Bourget
set
was
out
great.
a new
energy
vision then.
the energy was great. It
Exactly.
was a moment of emotion. It was a moment of sharing a vision. And whether we like it or not, at least we had an idea of where he wanted France to go over the years. And this is probably something, after admitting where he failed, that he could do tonight. Try to show youth, show young people what is the France is dreaming for them within 10 years.
And you think that could work?
Will it be enough?
So what?
I wouldn't bet on it, but at least it's worth trying.
But that's his lifeline.
If you create emotion, admit your failures, and add a vision, at least you could be the candidate of the left
but
wing
what's the vision?
for next election.
What vision would
I'm
he
eager to
defend?
listen to it as well.
Against finance, I think that would work with the people in Place de la République, but difficult for him to defend that. I don't know.
No, but against finance, once again, against finance, it was only dedicated to Nicolas Sarkozy. All this, and I remember Le Bourget, and I was in front of my television, and I must admit, sincerely, I was totally amazed. It was brilliant. He's got,
So you're the right-wing communications expert. You see the left-wing candidate running against your former boss, railing against finance, and you said what? Bravo.
Exactly. Bravo. Why? Because I always thought that, it's not because, I was, advisor for Nicolas Sarkozy, but for me, Nicolas Sarkozy was not only a right politician, because, after his election, 75% of the French people was behind him. Of course, he was the only one that didn't realize that, and he forgot, the promise we had with La France d'après. But anyway, when I was in front of my television, I remember the Le Bourget speech, he was sincere. Wait a minute. Sincere. The energy was sincere. And really, I figured out, being in front of him, I would have been totally amazed by this. In front of my television, it worked perfectly.
So it was a transformational moment in his campaign.
Exactly. But I'm totally agree with what you said about this particular moment of, I hate finance. I was amazed I was laughing about that because, of course, it was a lie, a big lie. Why? It was only dedicated to, I'm not like Nicolas Sarkozy, I hate rich people. But you don't care about that. It was only an argument, and a very clever and creative argument for the campaign. And he won with this. But just after it's, how do I put me away from this? But it's very difficult. Why? Because everyone remembers this. Everyone remembers this fight and this aggression.
Yeah,
against
4 years
finance.
on, it was the defining moment of his campaign.
Maybe tonight, it's the night. Tonight is the night and the moment for this particular argument to say, even with this, maybe I was wrong. And only this, maybe I was wrong, could maybe make people understand and feel that, okay, this guy maybe understood that no time for bullshit. Now we have to fit in reality. I'm in front of 3 young people. It's going to be really a disaster if it goes wrong. Why? Because young people, it's not only during the show, it's after the show. And during the show, they are texting,
they're tweeting, on Facebook.
And these guys, there are one from the right, one from the left, and another one from the Front National, extreme right party. There won't be a tender with him.
No,
he's going to be very strong, and he needs this. The risk of doing this is he has to prepare himself, I think, and if he chooses this kind of show, it's because maybe he's prepared to say, okay, I'm going to fight, I'm going to connect with them, I'm going to push, the idea before them. He needs to lead the speech. He needs to lead the show, and the only way is to, like you say in Aikido, you took the strength, the aggression, and you turn the aggression. Before the strength, he needs to say, okay, for unemployment, I was wrong, and maybe about finance and about liberalization, I was wrong.
He needs to turn things around. He needs to be radical. He needs to be proactive. Now, I want to put a hypothetical to all 3 of you. Let's just assume tonight goes reasonably well. It doesn't absolutely kill his chances of re-election and leaves the door open. Once that door is left open, he's got 1 year. He does not have much of a record that he can defend. That's what you were telling us. A lot of French people would agree with you. What is his strategy to then impose his candidacy and then actually go ahead and secure that re-election? How does that work? What's the political calculus?
I think what he sees is tactically it's possible for him to do it. If he gets the opponent that he wants, which is Sarkozy, and the challenger that he wants, which is Le Pen, it can work. And I think that's why Hollande, is still smiling today, and still goes to the movies and lives a normal life, because he sees a path, and I think it's somebody who has succeeded not because he necessarily wowed people with his talent, although he did have a few exceptional moments. He had Le Bourget. I'll also remind you of the time he went on TV and surprised everybody with the 75% tax. That was a little bit of a surprise.
But that was all before his presidency, though.
That was all before, but it helped to get him elected. There hasn't been too many sparks of genius or political innovation with this man in the past 4 years. I think he thinks that he can get there by default, and maybe the stars will line up, and maybe he's just a lucky guy, and he'll get there.
But French voters, and the numbers bear this out, absolutely do not want this scenario, the François Hollande versus Nicolas Sarkozy versus Marine Le Pen in the first round. In fact, take a look at voters' intentions if François Hollande were not the candidate. Here's how a variety of other left-wing candidates would fare. His economy and finance minister, Emmanuel Macron, would get 34% of the vote in a potential first round of the presidential election. Manuel Valls, current prime minister, 28%. Martine Aubry, who is really a figure of the traditional socialist party, the one that is not really represented by François Hollande's style of governance, would get 25%. Jean-Luc Mélenchon from the far left, 22%. And you've got to put this in perspective with what Hollande would be getting, which is an estimated 16% of the vote. He would get trounced, according to current polls, against pretty much anyone if he were to take part in the presidential election.
Well, I agree. These figures are confirming what we are observing on Gov application for months, and this reflects the situation. It's true, but I would say that whoever be the candidate at the last moment, the key of next election will probably be in the capability of these candidates to prove people that their voice, their opinion, their advices, their proposal are listened by politicians. I think that's the time for politicians to tell people what they are going to do to make their life better is over. People want to be part of the game. And if François Hollande wanted to bring something new tonight in his show and to illustrate he understood these messages from people, he would propose, whatever be the topic, a referendum. He would prove that he is able to involve people in the decision process. And this will probably be one of the key of next election, prove people their voices are waiting in the decision process.
Talk less and listen more.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And do more.
And act more. Because the real problem, I think, even from people who are voting right, center is not existing anymore, rest in peace, left extremes or people who don't want to vote, they all think the same stuff. It's politicians are not acting anymore. Even it's not a problem of promise. It's a problem of everyday life.
Politicians are powerless to to address our daily problems.
Exactly, and they are always hiding themselves. That okay, but when we are voting something, the results are going to happen in 5, 7, 20 years. So it's totally surrealistic, And I think that we need to listen to people. We need to connect to their emotions, to what they are feeling, and we need to act sincerely, clearly, and not hiding ourselves behind a bonsai.
Nicolas Vinocourt, you wrote in a recent article that even François Hollande's own advisors have been questioning his media and communication strategy recently. He's been really, you write that he's been aloof, that he's let other people speak for him, but that he's not been very present in the public debate himself.
Absolutely. Things are so bad in the Hollande presidency right now that people on his teams are arguing and fighting amongst each other. There's a political camp, which is in charge of the policies, and then there's a communications camp, which is in charge of putting him on Periscope and getting the president insulted. And these people are blaming each other.
That is not their job description, by the way.
Right.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. But
it was unintentional.
They should bear responsibility for that. And these people are blaming each other. And the communications are saying, hey, we can't do anything if the policies are no good. And the policy people are saying, why are you putting our president on, on this application, or doing these events that don't make sense because they're not tied to some kind of political action. And there's finger pointing, and there's blaming, and there's kind of a feeling of end of days. I've heard from some people in the government say, do you have any, have you heard of any job openings?
Oh.
Because we don't know exactly, where we're going to end up after in a year's time.
And they don't know how much longer they're going to have a job. Nicolas Vinocourt, thank you very much for joining us here on the France 24 debate. I'd like to thank our guest Pierre-Alexandre Tellier as well, and Franck Tapiro.
Thank you.
François Hollande goes on French national TV briefly, just a few moments from now. And of course, we'll be here to debrief on France 24. Do stay tuned. Emma James joins us now for Media Watch. You've got more on this same topic, of course. You've been reading media, you've been reading social media, and you've got your finger on the pulse of what people are thinking ahead of this show.
Doing my best. There is a lot being said about this particular programme, but many people really don't seem to be able to understand quite why it's happening at all. Is the French president going to really answer the questions that the French people want to have answered? Is he going to do anything to explain all those reasons, basically, why he's become the least popular president in France since polls began? Now, Newsweek is looking at a particular poll which actually came from Le Parisien newspaper, which said that 76% of people think he shouldn't stand again in 2017. Even among those who generally vote left, that figure still remains at 66%, which really gives you an idea of the scale of the problem that he's facing. And so a lot of people are saying, well, does anyone really care what this man has to say? If we take a look at the local, they describe him as doomed Hollande, set for a pointless 90-minute TV grilling. They say that clearly he's a man who is more pint half full than half empty kind of guy. Le Figaro, which is, of course, a left-leaning newspaper, they're slightly more positive about it, describing him as unloved, misunderstood and criticised. But a lot of others basically...
That's unusually generous of Le Figaro regarding François Hollande.
Yes, but lots of other people not generous at all, depicting him basically as dead president walking. In this case, literally, basically saying that he's already dead.
When you're a left-wing president and a right-wing daily that has slated your entire presidency ends up being your best defender, you're having a bad day.
You are indeed. Taking a look at some of the other reactions to this online, this Twitter user saying that tonight's programme on France 2 is looking back at the misses, failures and falls. Is it the blooper tape or the outtakes, as we call them in English? No, it's Citizens Dialogue with François Hollande, because that's what it's called. The hashtag is Dialogue Citoyen, Citizens Dialogue. Other people tweeting about this. Some think there won't be many watching what's sure to be a very carefully controlled PR exercise. That one rather damning in terms of who's going to be left in front of the television. Others calling for a boycott of the programme, and Hervé Baudry, a wonderful French cartoonist, has come up with this one saying, tonight a big audience for the programme is expected, and they've got François Hollande talking to a dog and a cat.
So everyone taking a shot then. Is anyone actually taking this TV show seriously? There must be.
There is. France 2, for one. The national broadcaster.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've got plenty of very glitzy promos, and it all looks really quite sexy. When it comes to politics, this is about as good as it
I
gets.
like this.
Well,
I want to do this.
funnily enough, that has been picked up on by Le Petit Journal, which is a very satirical, very funny programme here in France that pokes fun at pretty much everyone. Normally it's the politicians, but this time they're focusing on those presenters. They say that this is an event of such an exceptional event that we're going to cross all our arms like the Americans. And if we take a look down here, when I saw this morning, made me nearly spit out my cup of coffee. I just thought that was brilliant. They clearly not too impressed with the way that France 2 are selling this with a rather, let's say, stylised approach. But elsewhere, people are talking about the others who are taking part, because it's not, of course, just journalists asking the questions. There are going to be some real people there.
Voters.
Absolutely. It's a female entrepreneur, a National Front voter, and a leftist blogger who is also a student and the mother of a jihadist. Now, it's not necessarily the most representative, and there's been a lot of criticism of that online. In particular, the fact that there are no union representatives there, because, of course, with the ongoing protests about the proposed changes to employment law, they felt that unions should have been represented, although there is a student there. And there's a farmer whose appearance was cancelled. He's very, very angry about it indeed, and believes that basically the agricultural sector should have had their say. Lots of people really basically don't hold out too much hope for what's going to be said tonight. The promises of Hollande on that particular GIF.
All right, it all starts under an hour from now. Emma James with Media Watch, thank you very much. I'd like to thank our guests again for coming here on the France 24 debate. And we're going to take a very short break. Another edition of World News live from Paris just after this.